Well, millions of households will see a record 80% rise in their energy bills from October. We now know that. Ofgem, the energy regulator, have announced that the energy price cap is to increase from the current £1,971 to £3,549.
Yeah. People getting in touch are rightly worried this morning. So to get some insight, we are now joined by Good Morning Britain's Martin Lewis. Martin, as ever, thanks for joining us. Now, no one should be surprised by this. You've told us this is coming. We've all known this is coming, but it doesn't make it any easier, does it? It's just to see it and see now that it's an absolute fact makes it really catastrophic for so many.
So he said this is an absolute fact. Guys, it's worse than an absolute fact. It's an absolute farce that this is happening. And guys, it's been creeping up on us, but we haven't even been alert to see it. Some of us could see it well back. I keep talking about it, guys, and that's why I get in trouble. But guys, we're heading for economic collapse.
Many people.
Well, I've been accused of catastrophizing this situation, and the reason I've done that is because this is a genuine social and financial catastrophe that is putting lives at risk. And we have to hope it should have been done far earlier. I first actually said that we'd see an October price cap over £3,000 on my show back in March. So while this is shocking, it is far from surprising. And we need urgent further government intervention. If you'll forgive me, I noticed in your readout, and I'm noticing many media organisations saying that the price cap is £3,549 a year. That isn't correct. If I just take a second to explain what's happening. The price cap is actually a cap on the standing charges and unit rates that you pay. They have gone up by around 80%. I've put on Twitter what the actual new rates are, although it is regionally averaged. The figure that's quoted, the £3,549, is what the cap would be for someone who has typical usage.
So 3,549 is typical usage. So if your usage is any higher than the norm, your cap is going to be way more than 3,549. I think that's what Martin Lewis is trying to say.
Most people don't have typical usage, they're more or less. And that means there is no maximum amount that you can pay for gas and electricity.
Did you hear that? No maximum amount. So it could go north of 3,549.
I assure you, Martin, we have been saying that this morning here on this programme. But it is important to say, because people might be just joining us, you know, that they could well be paying very much more. And also to give us a detail of who that cap applies to, because it's not clear either, is it?
It isn't, no. So you could easily be paying £5,000 or £10,000 a year if you have high usage. I worry terribly for some of those who have disabled children or disabilities themselves who need lots of electrical equipment to keep their houses warm because of medical conditions. There is also a price cap for prepayment. There's also a price cap for those who are payment in receipt of bills. Those caps are higher. Payment in receipt of bills is a couple of £100 a year higher on typical use than direct debit. So we've seen that happen now. And I'm afraid to say it doesn't end there. The regulator, and I objected to this in consultation, but the regulator decided that the cap would move every 3 months, not every 6 months, and that is going to cost people money. The prediction now...
So literally every 3 months, we're threatened with having to pay more. And I was saying you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. So whether you pay by direct debit or you pay by standing order, if you pay each time you get a bill, etc., you know, you can't win. But the one thing that I haven't heard yet, guys, is because of the lockdown and everything, a lot of people are now working from home. So if you're working from home, your usage of electricity, gas, all that sort of stuff goes up. Because when you're working at a business, they're going to be paying all the overheads. But the overheads are now transferred from the business to yourself. If you're working from home and you typically work an 8-hour work day, you're using gas, electricity, blah, 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 which you wouldn't be normally using because you'd be at work. So you have to factor that into that things, guys. So is it probably better to start going back into the workplace? You save 8 hours a day of electricity and gas bills. Goodness gracious, guys, we are caught in a trap. Either way we go, we are caught in a trap, guys. And this is not great. And I've been warning you guys, we need to be checking and keeping a real eye on this world debt clock and your national debt clock, because it's not just your utility bills that are going up, guys. It's everything.
In January, I don't really want to say it, but the prediction now in January is up another 51%.
Oh my gosh.
On top of where we are now.
So he said it was an 80% increase. was it for October, and then January is 50%. So what's that on top of that? Oh my goodness gracious.
And that would take a typical bill on direct debit to £5,386 a year.
So he's talking about north of £5,000. So at some point, guys, people are going to say, is it even worth working? Because every single thing you earn will be going to pay back all your utilities, etc. And I've said this before, guys, and this is why I'm getting into trouble, but I'm not going to say the word, but we are entering UC. They're looking to have a UC. Look up what UC is here, guys. I'm not going to put it out there. I'm just going to say UC. I've been told this a long time ago, and that's what they've been looking and planning for a long time. So everyone, at some point, we're going to hit a bubble that is just going to burst, and this crisis, and no one will be able to afford to do anything and pay anything. So there's going to be some kind of stipend, and we'll be hitting and heading towards UC.
And that is not such a crystal ball prediction, because we are 7 months through the 10-month assessment period for the January price cap. Some have also talked about what will happen the following April. Well, that is much more difficult to predict, as the assessment period for that hasn't started. So if we look at the totality across the winter, from October until March, you are probably talking, on typical use, an average bill of over £4,400 a year, typical pro rata. I mean, it is totally unaffordable. The help that we were promised back in May, that is coming through by the government, and I spoke to the former Chancellor days beforehand, and 80 to 90% of what I suggested was in the plans. That was based on a prediction for the winter of 2,800. Well, we're already at 3,550. And then in January, because then it was a 6-month cap, now it's a 3-month cap, it's going to be, on current predictions, £5,400. As you can see.
Guys, remember, we're all in this together. But they didn't give the caveat. Some of us more than most. Oh, my goodness.
See, that means the help that is being given so far is a drop in the ocean.
So
now, what deeply frustrates me here, forgive me, what deeply frustrates me here is, I told you, we said this on my show back in March, I warned on the programme months ago and weeks ago that this was coming. This is not unforeseen. And to get to the day of the announcement without having a firm package in place is devastating for many vulnerable people who already have mental health problems. I chair the Money and Mental Health Policy Institute charity. The panic and desperation across the country I am seeing in my email bag is just awful. It's awful.
We can see your emotion.
And we should have had a plan in place today.
Yeah, I'm going to say something controversial, guys. This has the potential of being more devastating, more catastrophic, more than anything that happened in the lockdown. We had a lockdown for 2 years. But guys, this is literally going to break the nation.
And we can see your emotion, Martin, and we're getting it as well, not just for those who currently got, you know, owned, that they already realise mental health issues, but people who might not think they have. It's pushing them into a terrible state. So, look, we've been talking to some people who think they have individual solutions to it. I know you'll have advice for people as well. And one of those is Louise from Don't Pay UK. Now, she has people in her family that have medical needs. She has decided not to pay the bill, not forever, but to withhold it. We know of the consequences of that. It will affect her credit. But when you see someone like you, Martin, with all your gravitas and credibility and knowledge, effectively, I can't say it any other way, being ignored in terms of getting a package in place, do you think more people will start to do that because they will have no choice?
I think the Don't Pay movement is growing. There are dangers to being in the Don't Pay movement as an individual. I mean, all we can say is what would happen in a typical case scenario if an individual refused to pay. What is far more difficult to predict is if there is a mass movement not to pay. I think what is safest for me to say is, while I think it should have come earlier, my hope is on the 5th of September, there will be a new Prime Minister. We've heard from both the candidates that they seem to indicate they understand the scale of the crisis. What we need to hear is concrete solutions. And let's be absolutely plain, there are many methods that you can put in place to alleviate and mitigate some of the terrible damage that the rise in energy prices are causing. So I'm going to be agnostic over the solution, but it will involve spending substantial amounts, billions of pounds of government money to stop some of the most vulnerable and many middle income earners from having some terrible choices to make this winter.
Guys, my problem is that the energy companies have had record bumper profits. So I don't understand why the government and the energy companies can't come together and use some of those bumper profits to actually help us, the civilians, to actually get through this period. I mean, really, to charge us is disgusting. We're spending billions and billions each month, each year on sort of setting up things for other people, armaments, this, that, and the third, etc. Why can't we cut back for the next 6 months on these whatever deals we're doing, blah, 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 and help our own people? It should be UK first, help your people first, sort us out in this scenario, and then when things settle down, we move on. But at the minute, it's like, no, you have to pay. So literally, we are working for free, guys. Something stinks about this. Something really stinks.
We have to hope that will be in place. And I suspect if it isn't in place, then people like the person who's coming from Don't Pay are going to become a louder voice in this country. But what I can't tell you, and I'm not going to give an answer, is what the exact situation would be for individuals who don't pay. Currently, it would be a problem for your credit rating. You could be moved onto a prepayment meter, and it could cause you some substantial issues.
And what Martin Lewis said there is correct, because I looked this up. So a lot of people who don't pay, etc., I'm not saying it's going to happen now, but the utility companies, by law, can get access into your property. Do you know, like the custom and excise, they have the right to come into your property, kick your door in, and then to take away and to install a prepayment meter into your property to get their money. So even if you don't pay, you could get bailiffs and all these people coming into your house, kick your door in, insert a meter there, a prepaid thing, they've set a limit for you, etc. It's going to cause you a lot of problems, and you get things like, as he says, can't court judgments against you, all this sort of nonsense. So it could just ruin your life. So this is what I'm saying. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. So the government has got to come and help us, and the government has got to sit down with these energy companies and say, listen, we can't put the burden on the people. You've got to take some of it yourself. You had record bumper profits this year and last year and maybe even the year before. You've got to do something for us, guys. You've got to do something for us, because guess what? We, the people, we will not forget. We will not forget, and we will not forgive.
But that is about an individual situation. We've never had a mass movement before, and I simply don't know how the state and the energy companies would respond to a mass movement. So I can't give firm guidance on that. But it would be wrong for me.